My name is Erika Seltenreich-Hodgson, and I'm a performance lifestyle practitioner. So performance lifestyle practitioners support athletes to obtain their goals inside and outside of sport before, during, and after their time on the world-class program. So I used to swim for Team Canada. I was on the national team from 2013 to 2019, which included going to Rio for the Olympics in 2016. So the reason I became particularly passionate about performance lifestyle is because when I was a swimmer, I completely committed to being an athlete and only an athlete. And I didn't really develop myself anywhere outside of that. So I didn't have very many hobbies. I didn't really know what I wanted to do for a career. I didn't know how to take care of myself outside of a sporting context. And then when I retired, I had about a 2-year-long identity crisis, which was not fun for me or anyone around me at the time. And that really made me realize that there was a huge gap in the services that I'd gotten in Canada. So came over here, did my master's degree, and then found out that this role existed and was very, very excited about it. So decided to go into it myself and help athletes where I didn't get that help. I like to think so. It's hard to say. It's something that kind of builds, bit by bit, year by year. But sometimes, after a session or a couple weeks after a session, you get a thank you from an athlete and you just know that at that time that had resonated with them in some way. And anytime you see somebody leave a session with actionable plans going forward or something that they feel like they can take control over, then it's worth it. Yeah. So it's complicated because on the one hand, performance lifestyle and taking that kind of consideration for what you want to do with your life, either now or in the future, is 100% in the athlete's control. So I'm not here to, preach anything major or tell them what to do. I'm here to support and empower them to do what they would like to do. So sometimes that does mean having conversations around the importance and the negative impacts that can happen on them if they retire and don't have those kind of things, or if just anything happens in their life that requires them to use a different identity than just the athlete one that they've developed. But it's not very much of a, preaching kind of role that I have. It's more of a I'm here when they're ready kind of role. Ooh, interesting question. So one of the key differences with shooting is it's such a cool sport because a lot of athletes can stay in it for a bit longer than other sports do. So the idea of even retirement or what it looks like to leave the world-class program can be very, very different because a lot of them will continue to shoot. It's actually it's a hobby that becomes an elite training sport for them, but then when they leave it can go back to being a hobby, and that's not exactly the same way that other sports work. So the phase out or the adjustment does look a little bit different, but it still can impact them in a major way. So it's just finding the cultural differences between different sports and making sure I'm attending to that as opposed to making any sort of assumptions. It's more athlete dependent, more specific to each individual. Mistakes is maybe not the right word. I guess there's themes, maybe. I guess something that I tend to notice is a lot of athletes come from a place where their whole life is, at least in sport, controlled for them. So, you have training camps, you have competitions, you know where you need to be when, you've got the support to tell you about maybe nutrition or things about sleep or those different bits and pieces. And it can be very easy to not be aware of how much autonomy you still have within that day-to-day life that you have. So I think the biggest thing that I have noticed is athletes feeling like they don't need to or have any control over their own lifestyles, when in reality there's so many hours left in their day still that they have some semblance of control over, or they can create more control over. So it's just kind of exploring that. I don't know if this is a tip exactly, but one thing I will say that's so central to not only performance lifestyle and the role that I do, but just the idea that, you know, you are a person first and foremost. So anything that you do, any identity that you have in sport, that's only a piece of you. And so really taking the time to explore who you are at your core, so your strengths, your values, the things that you find important, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, like really taking the time to think about those things about yourself so that you know who you are at your core will make it easier to go into any new environment. So who you are as an athlete might be a little bit different than who you are at work, or who you are in the hobby that you do, or in your social circles. But that person at the core is just shifting. So if you know that core, then you can be anywhere and know yourself. So explore yourself.